Welcome to the Heritage Support Grants Program webinar. This presentation will provide an overview of mini grants. My name is Bryce Gorman, and I am the fundraising educator for local history services at the Indiana Historical Society. This webinar is part of the Indiana Historical Society's Heritage Support Grants Program, made possible by Endowment. Here's an overview of some of what we're going to cover in this webinar. First, this webinar will provide an overview of the mini grant program, looking at the online application process. This webinar will also work to clarify application questions for everyone in the mini grant application. Let's start with the program overview to help you understand the purpose and structure of the mini grant, as well as the funding priorities and eligibility requirements. Mini grants range from $500 to $4,999, and the maximum project timeline is 11 months. Anything over $5,000 would be a project grant. Mini grants do not have any cash match requirement, and the application is a one-part application. There's no summary of proposal, letter of intent, anything like that. It goes from the full proposal straight to the review. The awards will be made approximately 6 to 8 weeks after the application deadline. On the flowchart, I hope that this will give you an idea of the overall grant process. In order to be eligible, an organization must be incorporated in the state of Indiana as a 501c nonprofit organization. They must have an annual budget under $300,000, and they must reflect history as a significant component of the organizational mission or propose a history-focused project. A history-focused project is one that will interpret, present, or disseminate a historical narrative. It's one that will tell a history story or provide useful historical information. Building and landscape projects will be considered if the building or landscape is primarily used to facilitate historical interpretation or if it houses a significant historical collection. Organizations that operate under a larger parent organization can be eligible through a friends group or a nonprofit fiscal sponsor as long as the friends group meets the eligibility criteria. If this pertains to you, I would urge you to watch the general HSG overview webinar for more details. You can also contact me. If you're registered already, you can contact your coach. We are here to help. The HSG funding priorities are intentionally broad. Organizations have many different priorities and needs, and we want these grants to be as impactful as possible. We've identified 4 broad areas for funding priorities. So projects should be collection stewardship. These projects will address the storage, management, and care for collections, associated documentation, anything entrusted to the organization's care. This might include historic objects. This could include structures or landscapes. Diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, DEAI. These projects focus on efforts to ensure diverse individuals fully participate in all aspects of organizational work. They'll broaden organizations beyond public accommodations and work to achieve genuine inclusion. Sustainability. These will include projects that focus on identifying and accessing internal and external resources the organization needs to achieve goals and improve sustainability. Sustainability projects meet the needs of the present without compromising its ability to meet future needs. Finally, planning. Planning projects identify organizational objectives and assess organizational capacity. There are a few funding exclusions. These are projects that, these are pieces of projects that are not eligible for any HSG funding. Funding exclusions include rent, mortgage, utilities, insurance, salaries, wages, or benefits for permanent staff, items for resale, building purchase, or retiring organizational debt. So a quick note, organizations may request funding for temporary project-specific personnel or consultants. We don't want organizations to hire permanent staff based on 1 year of funding, though. Uh, and we also will not allow percentages of permanent staff salary to be covered by the grant. If you have any questions about a proposal that includes personnel, staff, temporary staff, consultants, anything, please talk to your grant coach or you can contact me. If you need any assistance registering on the online grant portal, please contact a grant team member or myself, or you can refer to the HSG overview webinar. You can access the online grant portal through the HSG website. Please choose how to apply on the right sidebar and it will take you to this page. If you are doing a mini grant, it will be the section that is in the red, it's highlighted in red, and this will take you straight to the grant portal application. Just another note, once you start the application, please copy your answers into a separate Word document and please save often. There is no way to determine if the internet will go out, if there's a glitch with the computer, if there's a glitch with anything. But you can mitigate that by saving often and copying your answers into a separate Word document. So please have some form of backup. The first sections of the application involve important details about your project, the overview and the team. In the overview section, provide your project's title and the total requested amount. Conventional wisdom dictates that an organization should request the highest amount available when they apply for a grant. You know, the idea is that why would you leave money on the table? We are a little different. We want organizations to request the amount they need to successfully complete the project. Sometimes this might be the upper level, $4,999 in the case of the mini grants. Sometimes it's the lower level. The grant program is very competitive. We want as many organizations to be helped as possible. So for this reason, please do not pad your budget or combine several projects to fit into one proposal. This will decrease your chances of receiving funding. This section also includes the project start and end dates. Each round of grants has a set start date, and the default end date will be 11 months for mini grants. You can move this date up if you don't anticipate your project will take those 11 months. There is no penalty for finishing early. The next section covers information about the project team. Each round of grants has a, we want the name, title, and contact information for the project manager. This person is going to be responsible for overseeing and reporting on the project. They're going to be our main point of contact. We also ask for the name and title of the person completing the application if that is not the project manager. And we would also like a list of anyone on the project team, staff, volunteers, what have you, and any pertinent qualifications they might have. This will provide us a little bit of context for who's working on the on this project. Now that we have started with the details, let's move into the project narrative. So we'll spend a little bit of time on each of the questions in the narrative section. We'll go over the project summary, readiness, next steps, partners, building ownership, and fund management. The project narrative sections of the project and mini grant are, they are almost identical. The information in the project narrative should provide a preview of the project, and it should be like an executive summary. You want to provide enough information to demonstrate that you have a logical plan to address a critical need and that you have the resources necessary to put that plan into action with funding from the grant. Committee members, review panels will look for confirmation that your project meets eligibility requirements as well as funding priorities. You want to go into detail about your plans for the project, as this will be your only opportunity to make your case for grant support. But again, please keep it concise. The first question in the narrative section addresses the project summary. You should provide an executive summary of the project, a brief statement about the need your organization has identified, the proposed solution, how it will address the need, and explain the intended results of the project, who will benefit, and why. As you consider how you want to describe the project, it's useful to think of the these three pieces connected and independent. First, the need must be compelling. You have to convince reviewers that it's a situation undeniably worth addressing. Next, the solution you're proposing, the planned work, has to be logical and realistic. Reviewers must be able to see that your solution clearly addresses the need or problem you've described. The outcomes you anticipate need to be the obvious result of the solution you're proposing. A reviewer must be able to compare your solution and the results and say, yes, these are clearly connected. This project is very likely to produce these results. You also have to make sure that these results address the need you presented. You're trying to affect change by addressing that need. Make sure the end state of your project does that. Finally, remember that the work you are doing is for the good of your community. Your organization exists to serve the public, so frame these outcomes in terms of the people who will benefit from it. Always focus on people, not things, when discussing the impact of your project and your organization in general. The next section is institutional readiness. This is where you can provide evidence of your organization's capacity to successfully carry out the project. You want to prove to the reviewers that this is the right time and the right place for this project. A brief summary of your organization's history and accomplishments can help the reviewers draw parallels with your current project and past successes. This connects your capacity and expertise to the likelihood of more success with the project. Other factors you may want to mention include personnel, paid and volunteer, their qualifications that might contribute to the success of the project. If your staff or the volunteers have taken advantage of special training, assessments, or if they use professional standards, best practices, you want to mention this right here. Your organization's current programs, services, and activities may help reviewers understand how the project fits into the larger picture of the organization's mission. It's helpful to provide reviewers an understanding of your organization's role in the community and how, in turn, your community supports you. You may find that you need to include specific information based on the project you're proposing. So collections projects may require additional information about your collections management policy or your accession process or storage capacity. Building projects might require more in-depth information about facilities, a historic structures report, contractor report. When trying to figure out what to include in the institutional readiness section, consider what background information will be helpful to reviewers as they attempt to determine the likelihood of successful implementation of this project. The next section is unique to the mini grant application. It deals with next steps and sustainability. This section is the opportunity to explain how your project fits with your organization's long-term goals and how it will contribute to the overall sustainability of your organization. Reviewers want to understand where you see this project fitting into the big picture. What will successful completion of this project allow you to do next? Does this serve as a stepping stone to future projects? What type of follow-up will occur once this project is finished? So along the same lines is the idea that because your project outcomes should be people-focused and should allow you to demonstrate a higher level of service to your community, how will it lead to additional support from additional visitors, members, volunteers, donors? Will contribute to the organization's ability to secure additional funding? These will lead to a higher level of organizational sustainability. So all of these are questions to consider as you address how this project fits into the larger organizational picture and why it's critical to your future. There are a few additional questions in the narrative section that we should look at briefly. First is the question about co-sponsors and partners. So not every project will be a partnership, many will, or at least they'll have the opportunity to. Good relationships with community partners contribute to sustainability. So consider whether there are opportunities to engage with others on your project. If you've identified partners or co-sponsors, make sure to account for their role in your description of the project. We advise organizations to get letters of support or a letter of understanding from these partners so they can confirm that everyone's on the same page with this project. The next question is about building ownership. Organizations do not need to own their building or even have a building in order to apply for a grant. If they do, and especially if the project proposes changes to that building, there are things the review panels will want to see addressed. First, if an organization doesn't own their building, is there evidence that the building owner has approved of and supports these changes? Let's say the county owns the building from which you operate, well, the reviewers will want to see a letter or confirmation from the county that states you have their approval to implement these changes. Similarly, organizations should address any easements or covenants placed on the building. Finally, you should know that reviewers are also looking at lease terms when considering building changes. If an organization has a year-to-year lease, the case does become less compelling than if there were a longer lease. The final question in this section deals with how the organization will manage grant funds. Reviewers are looking for confirmation that the organization operates under a system of checks and balances and that financial information is available to and approved by the board of directors. They want to see that the organization has a process in place that allows them to track specific funds and ensure that the grant funds are only used for the project in the manner proposed. Organizations are going to have to be able to present proper documentation of spending at any point during the grant award. So reviewers will look for evidence that the organization is following procedures that can make this possible. You'll see several questions about organization fundraising. The review committee may look at this information to determine if your organization has experience managing grants, but we primarily use this information for data collection purposes so that we can better understand the extent which organizations are doing their own fundraising. Do not worry if you have very little experience with fundraising, grant writing. If this is your first grant, again, my position is to help you with that. So if you need any assistance, please contact me. But being new to this will not penalize you. All we ask is that you answer these questions to the best of your ability. The final section of the mini grant is additional documents. This section will call for a mix of required and optional documents. The required documents are the organization's annual budget, the project budget, which will be on the HSG template, a list of board members, and a copy of your IRS tax determination letter. Please note that the tax determination letter is not your state sales tax exemption letter, but it's the letter your organization received from to confirm your we'll go into each of these separately, but your organization's annual budget can be whatever form that your board has approved of for the organization's use. You do not need to use the HSG template. If your organization will be applying under a friends group, you will be required to supply a letter from the parent organization confirming that the parent organization supports the project and the application, that there's a member of the friends group on the project team, and grant funding will be held by the friends group. Some of the optional documents include letters of support, Additional documents that you think will help strengthen your case. This could include the contractor quotes, before photos of collections care. It can include pictures of the items which you would like to have restored or stored in protective boxes. This could be a historic structures report. Please be judicious in selecting your attachments. You do not want to fatigue the reviewers. However, if you think that this will support your case and provides context for what you're requesting, include it. Please include it. If you do include letters of support, please note reviewers want to see letters that specifically address this grant project. If these are support letters from other applications or awards, it's not really going to do you any favors. And in some cases, it may make reviewers wonder if the grant application was just not important enough for new letters. So reviewers want to see letters from partners, co-sponsors. They want to look for people who are participating in this project. So that can be program participants, visitors, or members. So again, when you're selecting whatever additional documents you want, please look for the ones that will most strengthen your case. It's also helpful to, if you're including a lot of documents and you're referring to these documents in the application, it's helpful to refer to them by name, number, file name, what have you, so that reviewers will be able to look at this. So we touched on the organizational budget a little in the previous slide. Again, HSG applications require the organization's annual budget, but that budget can come in whatever form your board has approved of for your use. You don't have to use a specific template. We have the HSG budget template that's available. You are free to use that if you like. It's not a requirement. It's just there. It's required for the budget, which we'll talk about next, but if you want to use it for your organizational budget, that's fine. If your organization doesn't have a budget, an annual budget, then this is something to discuss with your coach. Since this is a required document, they will work with you to figure out how to develop that annual budget. By requiring an annual budget, it helps reviewers better understand your organization. It's going to speak to your financial solvency, and it's going to put this project into perspective of how it fits into your overall operations. Here's the budget form that's required for all grant applications, mini grants, project grants. It's also required for the end of the grant reporting. So this, just a quick reminder, this is separate from the organizational budget. You have to submit both a project budget just for the project and an overall annual budget. So we want organizations to use the same form and information. It's going to make it so much easier for the reviewers. So you can download this Excel file from the HSG website. It's in the resources page. You can also find it in the additional documents section in the application, or you can email me. The project budget is divided into 3 sections: income, expenses, and balance. Here, here, and here. The budget provides a line item account of expenses and income. A good budget will be detailed, tracked, and changed. So let's go into those. It's going to be detailed enough to provide needed information for the grant reviewers, but also for the project team. This may include descriptions, unit numbers, prices, even detailed specific item numbers or colors. So when I say tracked and changed, I'm talking about how you will use this budget during the project. Ideally, you will submit your budgeted numbers, which are just estimates, and then as you incur each expense through the course of your project, you will update the budget with actual numbers. So let's look at the income section first. You're going to include all the money coming in for this project. Right here at the first one, this would be HSG funding. You'll put that in the budgeted income, and other lines in this income section would include any other sources of income, maybe money you already have in hand, other fundraising you need to do. So the total income amount at the bottom of income should equal the total amount of your expenses. Moving into expenses, this is where you're going to list your anticipated expenses by line item. At this point, you're only using the budgeted column. Leave the actual column blank until you make the purchase and know the actual amount. You want to pay attention to the balance at the bottom. We are looking for a balance of 0. Expenses and claim. One word about contingency funds. There are some projects that can reasonably include 5 to 10% contingency, just in case funds, especially with building projects or projects that might be weather dependent. If you're not sure whether you should include contingency funds in your expenses, ask your coach. Some budgets may change. Sometimes things don't go the way you anticipated, or sometimes they do. Sometimes you might get a sale. Sometimes there might be a weather delay. And we understand that you might have to reallocate funds. If you receive an HSG grant and find yourself in this situation, please talk to your coach. Any changes over 10% of the grant total will require a formal reallocation request. Again, this will be something your coach can help you with down the road. Another note, your project budget can only include direct costs. Indirect costs, the ineligible costs that we talked about in the beginning, overhead, facilities, administrative expenses, utility salaries, those do not belong on the HS budget. So before you hit the submit button, please review all the attached documents to ensure the required documents are in place and everything is readable. It's good practice to share that draft with a colleague. A second set of eyes might spot something that you did not. Once you've hit the submit button, that's it. You can print it, but you cannot edit it. So please print a copy for yourself. Make sure that everything is ready, and be aware of the submission due date. Applications will not be accepted late. Here is our information. When you will receive a coach when you register on the online grant portal, or if you're already registered, then you have a coach. But you can also contact myself or Tamara Hemmerline if you have any questions or need additional information. Thank you so much for taking time to learn about the Heritage Support Grants Program and mini grants, and we hope you'll join us for future training opportunities. So thank you very much, and best of luck in your applications.